Hey guys, this is Kevin Smith Jr., your host for the Container Happy Hour. Grab a drink, join us every 2 weeks, and we'll talk containers and future of the market. All right, we're here. Welcome to the Container Happy Hour. My esteemed guest today, Master Andrew Withers. Thanks for being here, mate.
Good to be here.
Cheers to you. So my friend Andy here is the sales manager for SEACO America, right? And
Right.
what did you select for us today? What are we drinking?
We are drinking Bullet Rye.
Bullet Rye. Why Bullet Rye?
I'm a big bourbon and rye fan, and Bullet Rye is just a little bit different. Good taste.
Well, let's do it.
Easy
Let's
on
get
the
this show
palate.
started.
Cheers, buddy.
All right, we can do this. So I'm kind of setting myself up by letting the guests always pick the alcohol, right? So I think if they start selecting White Claw or something, we're going to call the show off. That'll be the end of it from there. Tell us a little bit how you got into the industry. Like, how did that progression happen for you?
25. I used to drive plant and machinery, and I bumped into a friend of my father's who worked in containers at a black tiger. And having the gift of the gab, he said to me after 10 minutes, "Have you ever considered sales?" And I said, "Not really, mate." And 30 years later, here I am.
Here you are.
Still selling empty steel boxes.
And still not considering it.
And still not considering it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was that evolution like, though? Because I know you and I have known each other at some of your prior stops, right?
Yep.
And it didn't always involve direct leasing company type sales, right?
No, it started off in a city in Yorkshire called Hull, my home city, and working for a local company. They did sales, domestic rentals, and they pretty much went across the north of England, but were big where I was. And I was there for 10 years. And in 2000, the Americans came in, mobile storage, and we were one of the first 7 acquisitions in the UK that gave them a good spread across the UK. And at the end of 2001, I came out on a training course to LA, and it kind of ignited my passion. All of a sudden, it wasn't just a job anymore, it was a career. And that gradually progressed through various guises, through mobile storage and beyond. And I worked for a trader, and we used to buy boxes off SEACO. And I bumped into a lady called Sandy Bowman.
Yeah.
And eventually, after a couple of years, she offered me a job, but I was going to have to move from Liverpool to Miami. And so that went from there. And at the time, there were just 2 of us, Raf and myself, covering North and South America. And there's now 3 of us. And obviously, there's a lot more equipment to sell these days, and
Sure.
especially a lot more special equipment, reefers, tanks in particular, which were quite thin on the ground then. And obviously, as the company has progressed and become more successful, when that equipment goes on hire, it's got to come off hire.
Sure.
And so certainly in this day and age, the value add is obviously become a huge factor. And I certainly think that in the early days, the used market was very much just get rid of it at what you can.
Sure.
And now it's become such a key component in the P&L that we, every value add we can find, repairing stuff to cargo worthy, selling running reefers, not as is anything that makes us more valuable in the big scheme of things.
So how big is the overall SEACO fleet?
It should be 2.2 million TEU, although I think it may be slightly smaller than that now. Yeah, it's been pretty solid.
Do you have any kind of round number on disposal, an annual disposal that you're in charge of selling?
I don't know in North America, but globally, it'll probably be 50, 60,000 this year and next year, and the following year about 100,000.
Wow.
It's a big ramp up year for everybody that year.
So you've seen this progression, and I know I've lived this too, where the leasing company was so primary focused on leasing, right? And the resale side was kind of this stepchild within the office. almost,
sure.
right?
Absolutely,
Right.
for sure.
And I can't even tell you how many times you'd be in a leasing company office, and not SEACO per se, just in general, and you'd be speaking to someone about depot services or any kind of facet of the industry, right? And they'd say, "Oh, well, the steel traders or the junk traders handle that piece," and it'd be one guy, kind of in the broom closet at the end of the hall, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you lived that progression.
Yeah, and I guess in the last, in my time with SEACO, that change has been very gradual. The margins on leasing are shrinking, and so the importance of the resale division, if you're not making it on the front end, you're pretty be sure that you've got to make it on the back end.
Sure.
So the value of what we do has just escalated beyond all recognition. I mean, this whole value add thing. What can we bring to the table to increase the value of that asset? Whether it be turning it into a running reefer, whether it turning that HiQ into a cargo-worthy HiQ, something that it expands it, and a very much changing customer base, a much more diverse customer base. Again, looking for not necessarily your customer's customer, but somebody who gives you value add. There's no value in selling to some guy that's just going to flip it for $50 up the street.
Sure.
There is value of finding a grading on a box, not just a cargo-worthy grading, but a cosmetic grading if required. That gives the buyer, he's got to do some conversion work. He's got some other, add-ons he wants to do. He's looking for a better box, and he's prepared to pay for it.
Sure.
And that, I guess, is reflected in the increase over the last 10 years of one trips.
Yeah.
It's gone from like nothing or a few that you left to one or two companies to just about everybody that's anybody now has a one trip.
One trips, yeah, directly.
Build program directly, dealing with the factory. And that was another thing. You go back 7-8 years ago, the lines, the factories did not want to talk to anyone other than the lines of the leasing companies. You only want to build 50. You'll have to take them in grey, and we'll put them on the end of their production run.
Right.
Now you can have them in any colour. We'll put your decals on.
And if you want two, that's okay.
And if you want to, that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
One this month, one next.
Yeah.
We'll accommodate.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
Now that has morphed into, as well, it seems like everybody at the factory has a cousin who is now also bringing in one trips.
Right.
And so now we're competing against those guys too.
Sure. Yeah, I remember, years ago, do you remember a guy named Joe Gora? Does that name ring a bell for you?
No.
He's, boy, I don't know how old Joe would be now. I bet he's pushing 70 now. But he came up with this model, and I'm not saying he was the first to do it, but it was revolutionary to us. And he comes in and he says, "Hey, I've got this factory, and I'm going to build all these new boxes, and I'm going to one-way them over, and they're going to sit here consigned to you to sell. And you're going to use them for these custom modification type programs." Now, today I'm saying that, and anyone watching this that's entered the industry in the past decade says, yeah, big deal. Why is that anything, right? But as well as I do, that was so far ahead of where we were at that time, right? 15, 20 years ago, to have that vision and say, these are useful. And the people spending the extra money to modify and customize these, they want that one-trip product, right?
Yes, they do.
And I often think back about that program, and I look at some of the notes on it and go, this is the exact model that you're seeing so many people in the industry following today.
Correct. The only problem that seems to have come out of all this is now everybody's doing one trips.
Yeah, it's a little oversaturated, right?
You walk through any depot in North America, and you've got a pile of tan boxes with extra vents, high locking handles, A, B, C, D, and E, and everybody.
But it's this tan and this tan and this tan and this tan and this tan.
Yeah.
And you guys are fighting over $25.
And that's the problem. Everyone's selling a new box, and the guy who gets the deal out of a choice of 13 in most depots, is the guy that takes the smallest margin.
Right.
And so how dumb are we as an industry where we allow ourselves to sell a 15-year-old box and make $200, $300, $400, and then flip a new one time we've had the in and the out and some storage and make $50, $100, $150, and everyone will tell you they make $300, $400, and they don't. And they never, ever, ever include the cost of borrowing. I mean, I don't know anyone that lends money for free.
Are you being so bold as to say there's people that may be fabricating their margins?
I wouldn't like to be so bold as to say that, but I'm sure that there's an ounce of that possibly going on somewhere.
Okay. It's okay. We only have like 3 subscribers.
That's okay.
So you're not going to get in trouble.
And they don't even know our industry.
No. They're fine. They're fine. I think they're just Neil's friends.
Yeah.
You're okay. So if you weren't doing this, go on a little bit different path. If you weren't doing this, what do you see yourself doing?
Oh, probably still driving plant and machinery.
You think?
It's funny, our industry, isn't it? When you speak to the careers teacher at school and he says, what do you see yourself doing? And you're going to be a soccer player for Liverpool, or
sure,
play rugby for England or do whatever. But,
and then you realize,
I've never met anyone yet that goes, you know what? Those shipping containers seem pretty sexy.
Right.
Just like Google, I'll go there. And one day you wake up and 30 years has passed and you go, I'm now trapped. There's nowhere else to go. I'm unemployable.
Oh yeah, no, this is all I know. I know a bunch of stuff about a niche.
Yes,
that's great.
Yes,
that makes me really desirable. Yeah. So we kind of joke here that if people reach their 3rd year, they're a lifer.
Yep.
And it's twofold, right? In the one sense, they're committed because now they are excited by it and realize that it changes every day. In the other sense, they're not marketable anymore. Like we've ruined them. Like they're part of this crazy industry and we've ruined them. So that 3rd year mark, join us. You're stuck.
Right. You're stuck in now.
You're one of
California.
There's no leaving.
That's right. You ain't leaving. Yeah.
So what do you vision as the biggest challenge? And I kind of want to take this down 2 different paths. The biggest challenge in the industry, 1, looking at it from a top-down view of the entire intermodal industry, and 2, for you specifically.
Me specifically, I think that the rise of the internet seller has been an absolute nail in the coffin for everybody, whether it be the depots, whether it be the leasing companies, whether it be the traders. They're buying equipment sight unseen. They're building it into something it's not. They're selling it to somebody they found on Craigslist, Facebook, or some other facet of social media. It's not a true depiction of the product. It's getting our industry a terribly bad name. Some of them have come and gone inside a couple of years.
Wow.
Yep. Some of them are still going. But in the meantime, nobody forgets. And
so do you, let me reroute this for a second, then we'll go back to the overall industry. In that sense, do you struggle with that aspect where you may get the call to complete a sale and the client already has a preconceived number?
Yes.
Right? Now, it may not be an educated number because they've studied market analytics and they're very piped into the scene. It may just be a number because they received it from one of those internet providers, right?
Correct. And you don't know whether they've even got the deal, but many of them are worded, we have a sale for 4 high cubes X New York at $1,100. If you can meet or
right.
better this, please send us an invoice. Well, you know that nobody can even beat it or better it, but
right.
That's what the customer said he's prepared to pay.
Right.
So,
and how hard is that model then to shift, right? It's if you went into this appliance store and washers and dryers were $1, and then you walk next door and they're $4, but that's the real price, yep. And you're trying to be sold the $4 product. You're not going to believe it, right? You're going to think the $4 guy's the crook or he's trying to pull something over on you. When the reality is you don't fully understand the dollar wasn't a valid model, right? It was a cardboard washer and dryer. It wasn't a real one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the sign on the gate, containers for $500. You walk through the gate and you've got a piece of junk. No, I'm not buying that. Well, we've got this one at $1,000.
Or we're sold out of the 500.
Yeah. We've got this one at $2,000. We've got this one at $3,000. And you can have what you want, but it comes at a cost. And our industry on used products, if you bought anything used, you'd want to go and see it, wouldn't you?
Sure.
Car, typically, you'd want to go and see it. And in our industry, we make that purchase and then allow these guys to do this, truck the container 200 miles into the boonies and find out it isn't what it isn't. And then, somehow it seems to be our fault.
Right. Yeah, you're the bad guy.
Yeah. Now, these guys are slowly disappearing, but for every one that disappears, we seem to get 2 that pop up.
Right.
and I don't know how long it'll last. And our industry has always suffered from the guy working in the back bedroom who has no margin, no risk of failure, really. But we do need to be very mindful of this and how we avoid it. And unfortunately, we're in a very difficult position that, do they buy containers? Yes, they do. So who wants to be the one that says, let's ignore their inquiries because they're a waste of time, because somebody then will be picking up their inquiries.
Right.
But many of them, despite how many times you tell them, nobody has a reefer in Salt Lake City, right? It doesn't exist inland. It goes back to the coast. They come and ask the most incredibly crazy questions.
Do you have 153s?
Yeah, and you explain to them we're an international leasing company. We don't run a domestic product.
Right. Well, why don't you have them? Are you hiding them from me?
That's right. Or I've seen your boxes in that depot.
You just don't like me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen your boxes in that depot. You have got them in there. Yeah, but they're young and they're not for sale. Well, why are they there then?
Why? Yeah. So you're not good at your job because they're sitting here.
That's right. They're not for sale.
So screen back to that for a minute and look at it from the top down. What do you think that's the same problem that's facing our whole industry, or do you think there's some other facets to that problem?
I think there's a lot involved. I think the big are going to get bigger because of economies of scale. We've seen Triton, double in size, but they're very well run and
absolutely,
the way they do things. The ships are getting bigger.
Yep.
There's a perception that everybody wants new, and so it's very difficult. What do you do with a 7-year-old box?
Yeah, it's no man's land, right?
It's no man's land. It's way too high on the books to sell. But probably if it ends up in, St. Louis, Missouri, you're not going to lease it out of there. So you sit and store it for another 5 years and
accrue more costs.
But let the dollar amount tick away on the net book value.
Yeah. Or
do you take the hit today, turn it into cash, and use the cash to build something better in Asia? Do you reposition it? How successful can you be repositioning from the inland back out? And that goes hand in hand with even the sheer number of volume of equipment that ends up in difficult locations, like say for example Savannah, small location.
But you guys find where you have to start restricting those redeliveries, right?
As much
as you can, right? Because you're still at the whim of the shipping line to some extent.
That's where we, and I guess every other leasing company, have got way smarter, opening up more inland locations or learning to reposition into the inland locations where we can get an uptick in price, where we're diluting the offering on the coast. So we've not got so many boxes in the Long Beach.
Purely from a resale aspect.
Purely from a resale, right. Because they're not going to lease from there.
Right.
And even if you look to reposition, there are simply many, many locations where there is no cargo flowing out, and the cost of obviously doing an empty repo, it just makes it a non-starter.
And that's another angle to this whole thing where we talked about leasing companies expanding their resale profile internally, right? They're also adding, a lot of them are doing the logistics and repositioning teams inside the leasing company, right?
Absolutely.
And that's become a vital cog in the whole situation, right? Because this leasing guy now is tasked with get the assets out. They may come back in that no man's land we were just talking about, where the asset's too high a value, and that logistics team has to fulfill some sort of obligation before it gets to you, right?
Very much so, and also how that's progressed in that every leasing company now had a repositioning team that essentially worked for leasing. And, you want your 10 boxes moving to Denver. Okay, I'm busy at the minute. And we were the last on the list, and guess what? The train left last Tuesday.
Sure.
Now we have reached a stage where everybody is employing somebody who works for resale. And that is their job to again, find another add-on by repositioning inland into an area where we can get an uptick. So that adds something for SEACO.
Absolutely. So looking in your crystal ball, 2020, any trend line, forecast, prediction, anything you see in the market? Could be simple, could be out there. No one's going to hold you to it. Consider yourself a weatherman. You can be wrong. But the basis of the question stems from that we've been riding this utilization high across all leasing companies for several years now. And I think for people outside the industry, it's important to note that that's pretty unique in a sense, right? Because we've all lived this model and we see it, oh, they peaked, it comes back. It peaks, it comes back, right? And we're living the anti-cyclical nature of that in the depot.
Yes.
Right? You're riding high, we're empty. You have a big off-hire profile, we're full. It just continues to go back and forth like a wave, right? What we're experiencing now is several years of that sustained utilization. So where do you kind of look ahead at 2020?
I see 2020 at the moment. Everything I'm seeing, certainly in my little pot in North America, as being very similar. I think a similar volume is going to come to sale. I think utilization will remain pretty static. One of the biggest problems, I guess, is that the steamship lines are still not doing well enough to want to go out, even with all the mergers and groups and one thing or another, that they want to go out and build a lot of their own equipment. So that means they've got a lease.
Let me ask you about that. Do you feel, and this isn't, I'm not picking on shipping lines, so I don't want to get any hate mail directly from them, but do you feel that's kind of a self-imposed problem? Like they can dictate the rate profile for shipping, right?
Yes.
It's always the joke to me that how does the United States Postal Service lose money? You decide how much a stamp should cost, right? So you should be able to determine the value and the allocation of funding to make it profitable.
Well, I think obviously
it's not that simple, but the steamship line should be able to.
They went for market share.
Exactly.
And that was clearly, the wrong way to go. But hey, what do I know? But
we're just two guys drinking in my office.
Absolutely. And now obviously that's changing very quickly. There obviously is a lot of mergers going on and the way the whole trade thing works.
Sure.
And the bit nobody can quantify at the moment is how the whole US v China thing is going to pan out.
Sure.
We would imagine that reality and common sense will kick in and it will really go away.
Best case scenario,
because it's going to affect jobs everywhere.
Sure.
And nobody wants that.
Now, we dodged a major bullet on that tariff imposition as it relates to containers, right? I mean, that was a huge sigh of relief for all of us in a sense. But how much do you think that impacted idle equipment in the States? Do you think people started posturing to get stuff out of the States as a preventative measure, or it hadn't gone far enough down the path?
I don't think it gone down far enough down the path.
Yeah.
And I think that nothing really will come of it, because I think that common sense will kick in the end. The same as you did kind of with the Mexico situation, because there's just too many jobs that are going to suffer.
Right.
And it's not just, we're just thinking and talking about containers, but it doesn't matter what you see on that tariff list. It was impacting everything from, computer stuff.
Oh,
onwards.
sure.
It was everything.
Yeah. It was a chemical agent that they use in algae. I mean, if you really broke it down, you're like, that's a thing. That's a thing that's on the tariff list.
Right.
Right. So tell me what the most rewarding aspect of what we do, or of what you do, or is there any part of it that you come home sometimes to the Queen and you say, this was a good day because
I sounds really cliche, I guess, in 2019, but I just really enjoy what I do. I'm a people person, as anyone who knows me knows. I like
Sure.
to talk, and this job, this industry allows me travel. I work for a great company that look after me really, really well, and they've always done so. And we're a major player in the game, and I just get a buzz from doing my job. And I have to say, I know it sounds really corny in this day and age, but there's very few people that actually get that.
No, I think that's enough, right? But I think that you're probably in the minority, and I think commenting about 2019, 2020, I mean, that's the world we live in. That very few people have that amount of content and self-worth. And
I guess I could only be happy if I was Kevin Smith Jr.
Careful what you wish for, man. So we're going to kind of loosen it up a little bit here. Our final string of questions. So you have the choice you may either have a Champions Cup title for Liverpool or sell 5,000 containers tomorrow morning.
Oh, I'd have to go for Liverpool. I'm sure if I sold 5,000 containers tomorrow, they'd be too cheap. I've sold them at the wrong price. So,
you get in trouble anyway.
Yeah, that's right. So I think we'll go for Liverpool right now. It's got to be Liverpool's year.
Done.
We're
Final
sold out.
answer. Yeah, perfect. Okay. This one, if you incorrectly answer, you have to polish off one of those drinks in front of you. Do you know what IICL stands for?
Institute of International Cargo Lessors.
We'll accept it. You don't have to chug until we're done rolling.
Okay.
Well, thank you for this. I really enjoyed it, mate.
No worries. Thank you for your day.
Stay tuned. We'll do another episode soon, and we'll bring some stories, some market intel, and a few drinks. Thanks, guys.